This is Fred Beck from Fred Talks Fighting. I'm joined by Alexis today at London Shoot Fighters in London. Alexis, thank you for your time today. I know you're a pretty busy guy. Just touching on the Misfits show, this is the last time I saw you. Your overall thoughts on Misfits 22? I guess you have the MMA aspect, which you would have quite liked being from an MMA gym, and also a good few pro fights, a good few influencers fights. How'd you find it?
I thought it was absolutely outstanding show. I thought it was really well matched. Matchmakers did a great job on that night. And some really fun fights, like really fun for the audience. Some growing fights for some of the Misfits champions as well. So to start bigging them up, and then obviously risky fights where you kind of got it all on the line. So it had it all, in my opinion. And then you had the debut of Dillon Danis, on Misfits for MMA. The debut of MMA. So I think that was amazing.
Do you see Dillon Danis staying at Misfits, or do you see him going to the UFC?
No, he won't be able to go to the UFC unless he has an outrageous win streak in MMA and is at that level. The UFC they're an entity. We have fighters in the UFC now, and they're not just a business of a business of the best, like the best of the best. So when Misfits MMA launch MMA and they have MMA champions, and the caliber of MMA fighters is so good that will rival the UFC, and or get guys in the UFC, then we're talking. But right now, you have a guy that hasn't fought in a very, very long time fighting a guy who has never had an MMA fight before. That's the reality of that fight.
Well, we see guys from Bellator the whole time go over to the UFC. I think like Pitbull is an example, and these guys just can't hang whatsoever. So it just proves how kind of high up the UFC is in terms of the caliber of fighters.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've got guys that transferred over from Bellators, the Michael Chandlers who are now famous, the Eddie Alvarez. These guys were all UFC champions. They were Bellator fighters. The Michael Pages that are walking in. At the top end of Bellator is the top end. Of those organisations, the top end. But I think now the other organisations, they're just not as high calibre as the UFC. The UFC has just got the creme de la creme of athletes at the moment.
And then you got Misfits kind of throwing a big curveball in the mix here.
Yeah, look, the thing about Misfits is it's a structured show that everyone's come up with that there's an appetite for. And the MMA that's going to be done there is different. It's not going to be the same MMA that you see in the UFC or in PFL or and previously Bellator or in Octagon, which is a great European show, or all these other shows. It's a different kind of MMA that you're going to be seeing, a different rule set, different structure, different arena. There's lots of things that are going to be changing in Misfits that I think will appeal to a lot of traditionalists, and then on top of it will add excitement for the new guys, and also for the fighters. Trust me, as a fight fan, seeing what Misfits has got planned, the concept is fantastic, like amazing.
Dillon Danis versus Eddie Hall. This is kind of like a good freak show sort of Misfits fight that could easily sell quite a few pay-per-views.
Yeah, I mean, that is exactly what Misfits is about. You've got one guy who's weighing 175 pounds, and the other guy's weighing 300. One guy's the strongest guy in the world, the other guy's a jiu-jitsu black belt, a world champion. So you've got that juxtaposition of what the UFC was famous for at the beginning, right? The UFC at the very beginning was famous for anybody, any weight, any style, who's the best, what's the best. So you kind of, in a way, we're going back to its roots, but there's a comedic factor involved, and on top of it, I think there's a who will win factor for a lot of the new audience. Like, shit, can that guy beat this guy? It's pretty interesting.
I know, we'll find out. No, that certainly is one of those fights which is very easily marketable, and would get the casual viewer interested, which is what you want to sell when you say pay-per-views. You want the casual viewer coming in, and that's how you sell hundreds of thousands of them. KSI was there also with Dillon Danis at ringside. Got a little bit into it, but he didn't seem too interested. Yeah,
I think to pique JJ's interest, you have to do something something very special, or be a certain kind of way. I don't think Danis is just as appealing right now to JJ as what he's doing right now. Not to say he won't be, not to say there aren't fights, but just didn't really hit the button.
Why is it taking so long for KSI to get his hand surgery?
Yeah, I think, have you ever seen the kid's calendar? Yeah, we're involved. We're involved in his calendar and stuff. It's like, it's outrageous. How much filming there is to do of YouTube videos, not to mention all the sidemen stuff, not to mention his sponsors, the other jobs, not to mention his singing, not to mention being on Britain's Got Talent. There's just so much the kid's doing. And then he's got a private life as well. I think these things, you've got to take precedent. A lot of time with the hand surgery, when he's punching, it's very painful. If he's not punching, it's there, but it's not crazy bad. So I'd probably do the same as well. Wait until there's a spot where I can get the surgery and get it done. Obviously, if there's a fight that's priority, he'll get it done straight away. But nothing's cooking at the moment for him to be excited about to get a fight straight away. So I feel, you've gone down the Jake Paul route where he doesn't want it. You've gone down this route that, it's not there. So, let me focus on what I want to focus on.
I remember watching an interview of Michael Venom Page from about 3 years ago, and he was describing when he sparred Tate. I believe it was down at this gym. Obviously, when you see Andrew Tate spar, you kind of get a measure of how good he is. How would KSI do against Andrew Tate in a boxing match? How would he hang?
Yeah, I think it'll be a great fight. I mean, I know Andrew very well. He's a very, very good guy, very competent, legit world champion, and he's a really good guy. I have nothing bad to say. Whatever happened in our gym stays in our gym. He's a great guy and a great fighter, and I think that, and he conducts himself really, really well. And I think that JJ with him would be an unbelievable fight. Styles make fights. I think it's a great fight. I think it'd be fantastic, and I think he'd be well up for it. And that's something that we're massively interested in. I think it'd be amazing.
Is that something that you've spoken to Mams about? I know that Ari Hawani put a tweet out saying that Tate will be fighting Misfits this year, or having something announced to do with Misfits boxing this year. Surely there's a text message to Mams or Mams to you about KSI and Tate in the same fight?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've spoken to JJ about it before. It's a fight he'd love. Yeah, it's a huge fight. Arguably one of the biggest fights in the world at the moment. So what's not to... I think people forget that this particular business is about fighting the biggest names on the biggest stages for the most amount of money and having the most amount of fun. If it's not fun, it doesn't make sense. If it's not big or it's not getting well paid, it doesn't make sense. So I think this fight makes complete sense. And like I said, I know Andrew from being, from sparring and doing rounds in our gym with our pro fighters. So I know what caliber man I'm dealing with. Dealing with an absolute killer. So that's the kind of business we like to be in. But I mean, he can sell a fight, and also he can fight. Let's not get it mixed up here. He's a good fighter. I think he's like 45, 46 wins as a pro kickboxer, multiple world champion.
And he's 36 right now, so he's not even too old. It's not like he's 35, 36, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's not one of these guys that gets out of shape. He's always in shape, always sparring. Comes from a really good gym. Shout out to his coach, Amir, in Luton, really good coach, good kickboxing gym. So, I'd say that there's zero doubt, he'd always be coming in shape, ready to fight. It's not like you're catching someone slipping and he's not training. So I think it's a great fight. So something that we're massively interested in. And having Andrew on Misfits is insane. It'll be great for the crowd, great for the show. And I think it's what he needs as well. I think he needs, you can make as much money as you like, but his passion is combat. That's what he's great at. So I think he'd be right at home there.
Pretty good. I can't wait to see it if it does end up happening. Let's talk about the stoppage between Tony Ferguson and Salt Papi. Was this controversial to you?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, Tony's a stud and love to see him win, and it was a great moment. But realistically speaking, the stoppage was a standing stoppage with no knockdowns, and Papi was arguably winning the rounds and the fight and was landing the better shots. He was getting overwhelmed, but I think he realised that he couldn't run all night long. He had to hold his feet and stay there, and his hands were up. He was guarding. It was not like his hands were down just taking shots. He was completely with it. I think it was an early stoppage, personally.
If the fight had continued, how would you see it going?
I'm not saying that Tony wouldn't have carried on doing what he's doing and overwhelmed Papi and maybe got the win. I wouldn't say that wouldn't be a possibility. But there was a couple of times where if anybody was going to get knocked out, it was going to be Tony. He nearly got knocked out 3 times in that fight. 4 times he was on his heels and got switched off and just came back alive again. And I think that a little bit more set of the feet from Papi, not so much on his back foot. A little bit maybe catching Tony as he was coming forward. He'd have got the stoppage. So I think it's a great fight. What a rerun.
You'd want to rematch that?
Look, arguably, obviously, that's up to the bosses. But for me, I think Papi definitely deserves a rematch on that fight. I think it will sell. I think it's a great fight. And I think Tony would love the rematch as well. But at the same time, maybe it's a hard sell for Tony. Maybe he wants to move on, onto bigger and better things in his head.
Would you do the Gibb fight, considering that Tony Ferguson is now Gibb's mandatory? Tony has the interim belt. Gibb has the main belt, per se. If
you're asking me as me, yeah, of course. If you're asking me as from a business point of view, no. I mean, Gibb doesn't fight often enough. You want a champion that fights. Like Papi's a Misfits fighter that fights regularly, that wants fights, talks about it all the time. And you've got another kid who doesn't. Not saying that he's not eligible for it, not saying I wouldn't want him to. I would. I think that's how fighting should go. I think you're the champion, there's a mandatory. But again, picking and choosing when you fight is not. You don't get paid a lot of money. You're not part of the team. Like you don't represent Misfits well. Do you understand what I mean? I think you've got to fight as often as you can and build that rep, and not just for the show, but for yourself, and solidify yourself as a champion. It's difficult to fight when you're not. It's difficult to be asked to fight when you're not fighting very often. It's difficult for the crowd to remember who you are, and to build that fight. From a business point of view.
So would you look into running more Dillon Danis versus Tony Ferguson in MMA?
Yeah, I'm not sure Tony would want that in MMA, only because he hasn't fought MMA in a long time, and had a couple of losses. I think, Tony boxing a few more times to build the crowd up is lovely. It's a great place for him to be, and maybe he'll excel and get even better. And Dillon having a couple of boxing fights is what you want to see on Misfits. Don't get me wrong, the MMA is good, but he's going to have to fight another guy who knows how to fight MMA. I mean, like Dillon's fight, the kid that he fought, I can't believe he grabbed him. Like, it's coming from...
I interviewed Warren Spencer. I spoke... The interview will already be out with Warren Spencer when this goes up, but I spoke to him yesterday, and I think it was more one of those things where he kind of fell over in his punch and thought, F it, we'll just go for it. Kind of a heat in the moment sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's not good enough excuse. That's not good enough. You have a plan you've been training for, you know what you're doing, your team's behind you, you've been to good gyms, you've been told what to do. The guy's a world champion jiu-jitsu player, and you can punch. Like, it's simple stuff, just follow the rule. Even if it's clumsy and goes wrong, don't go into your opponent's strengths. It's just the art of war. You don't do that. You don't get dragged into that sort of fight. And it didn't even last 5 seconds when he finally got the grip. It's just, I think it was inexperienced and panic. And I think those things should have been dealt with in camp rather than on that night. And it's just annoying because I think the fight could have been much more fun. From a spectator point of view.
Yeah, it would have gone on for a little bit longer, maybe if it wasn't for that case. Anything else on the show that kind of sticks out to you?
Yeah, there was a lot of fights that I enjoyed. Joey Essex fight, I'd have those two kids on my show every day of the week. They put their hearts into that. That was a great fight. Forget the technical ability and the this and that. Those guys put it on the line. I thought that was absolutely fantastic. Fight of the night for me.
Did you agree with the decision with the Joey win?
Yeah, I could have gone either way. I agreed with the win with Joey win. I didn't agree with one guy had it 3 rounds to Joey, and that was outrageous. Some of the judging needs a little bit of work on when you understand scoring or what people are looking for. It's just a bit annoying. But I thought Joey won, and I thought it was a really, really good fight. I thought the girl fight, Carla Jade. I thought Sim fight, the first one. Demi Sim first fight was amazing. What a great first fight. 2 game girls going at it, and the crowd got into it.
It must have been difficult for her because her opponent wasn't there all week, so she's going to resize the person up she's fighting. I
think the key to it is she's just up for it. It didn't matter who it was. And then you had the other 2 girls fight, Carla Jade and Daryl. What was her second name?
Jade, I can't remember.
I forgot her second name. But it showed the difference. From Carla's last fight, big improvement. Misfits champ, kept her belt, and then you went on to the Chase Demore fight. I don't think should have been stopped so early. I think the ref stopped that a little bit. Doctor stopped that a little bit too early. Could have carried on. And then obviously the fight that, for me, that was very, very good. I thought the Till Rockhold. I thought Rockhold had a good line at the beginning.
Yeah, you didn't speak about that well.
Yeah, Till and Rockhold had a good line at the beginning. Rockhold had a good line, landed a couple shots, and you thought, is this going to be a little tricky? And Darren just found his groove with that lead uppercut. That made Rockhold rethink everything, and then a 3-piece, and then the spectacular knockout.
Who does Darren fight next?
Interesting. There's a couple of... Well, remember, he fought Darren Stewart and had the fight of his life. It was a tough fight for him last fight. So I think there's a lot of MMA guys out there that can give Darren a run. I just think that you can't really go for the 42-year-olds, the older guys for Darren. I think you've got to go for the younger guys for Darren, so they're competitive fights. There are definitely a fair few fights out there. They're talking about the Carl Froch fight. I don't think that will happen. No. But it would be nice to see him against a pro boxer. The fight that interested me the most was the Ty Mitchell fight.
Well, Darren Till versus Ty Mitchell.
No, I just did.
The Ty Mitchell fight, right?
When we're talking about pro boxers, for the first time, Ty Mitchell got a guy who was 19-2. It might stylistically look like it was sweet, but it was a rough ride for Ty. And he's got lots and lots of talent, and lots of boxing IQ. But that cardio let him down a little bit, and holding that shot let him down a little bit. You can't move backwards with your hands down and do this sort of stuff. And you've got to, clinch, keep your hands up, turn, spin, take center again. I think it was a real eye-opener for him and his team. And I think that they took a risk and it paid off for them.
Is he light heavyweight? Or is he cruiser?
No, he's light heavyweight.
He's light heavyweight.
Yeah.
The champs division is Bivol. Well, Bivol's undisputed right now, isn't he?
Yeah, you can't mention those sort of names. No, that's scary stuff. No, Ty Mitchell's got to stay in this scene. He's got to get a little bit lesser opponents and build himself back up again, so that he can get to those sort of opponents and go bigger. The problem is if Ty thinks he can go bigger from that performance, arguably everyone thought the other guy won, or it was a draw at best. For him to win was I think it was relatively lucky. I'm not against it. I liked it. I'm a big fan of his family, his father, his training. I'm a big fan of him. I think he's great. I just think if he wants to progress, he's got to take these opponents as stepping stones and make sure he gets better at his job. And then move forward. If he wants more money, he's going to get bigger opponents straight away, and that's penny rich and pound dumb. That's not investing in yourself. He needs to make sure that he gets himself to a level where he's competent enough to move forward. And I think he can do that because he's talented enough to do that for sure. You know, so there's some super interesting things in Misfits at the moment. I thought there were so many good fights that night, honestly.
Going back to Till, who could he fight next at his weight class?
Yeah, you just got to go down the boxer route. I mean, the Carl Froch is the obvious thing. The George Groves is the obvious thing. These guys, but they're older, right? And they're a little bit out of shape. Do you want him to fight a boxer in shape? Like, would you say that, you know, I tell you what, he's like heavyweight. Could he fight Anthony Yard?
No.
Well, you know, so where are we going with this? Right. Like, I think there's certain guys he can fight and certain guys he can't fight. I think what you've got to do is, you know, you look at some of the guys in the scene at the moment. I mean, you've got Ryan, who's the kid that, Elijah Hall. Elijah Hall, sorry.
Yeah.
Elijah Hall. I mean, that's an interesting fight, Darren Till, Elijah Hall. Mm-hmm. That's a good fight. Like, I think that level of fight is a good fight. You know, you want to get him against, like, kind of active fighters that aren't so old, that can put up a fight. I think the Rockhold fight, I think Rockhold's chin was kind of shot from dot. The second he got hit, you knew he was going to get knocked out. You know, don't get me wrong, it was a good sell, great fight. And Rockhold's a lovely guy, but that wasn't the right level of fight.
Do you think Rockhold's done now, or do you reckon he'll fight again? What do you reckon his plan will be?
I don't think Luke will ever fight again. Mm-hmm. I think he's had his fill in MMA and he's had his fill in boxing and it hasn't turned out for him. I think he's got loads of other opportunities to make money and have fun and live his life. I think fighting at this level, when you have those kind of performances, you shouldn't go back on. I think they end up getting a bit dangerous and a bit sorry to watch.
Yeah, we'll see. He was a nice guy though, Luke, and he used to be a hell of a fighter back in the UFC, but maybe now it's kind of a step too far. But he's got a bunch of career options outside of fighting, so and that's kind of the best position you want to be in. And I remember he was saying, I saw he did an interview with Arrow, and he was saying he just won a big lawsuit against the UFC as well.
Yes.
That massive lawsuit, so he's got that paycheck coming in, the pay-per-view points paycheck, and also his missus paycheck. So it's a fantastic month for Luke.
Yeah, I mean the UFC lawsuit. I think one of the real icon of the fight game, Anderson Silva, just got paid out. Mm-hmm. He got over 10 million in the lawsuit. I mean, these guys deserve it because they've been in that sport for so long and they worked really hard, and obviously they had a case. So the truth will always come out. The UFC is an organisation that works really well, does great for fighters, earns loads and loads of money, and some of these fighters deserve some of that money, and that was the lawsuit, I guess. And what they wanted was correct and won. I don't think it's going to make a dent in the UFC. No. They just signed a $7.7 billion deal. So Dana White's an unbelievable businessman, a great fight fan, and understands the business more than any other human being in the world. So he knows what he's doing. I think everything's fair, and move on.
Awesome. Well, Alexis, as always, thank you very much.
Pleasure.